Christopher Nolan has a new film out, and once again, Matt Damon is lost and needs to find his way home. Welcome to my review of Nolan's The Odyssey. An odd pick, I think many of us would agree, for a Christopher Nolan film, seeing as though his films usually try and be as downbeat and realistic as possible, using minimal CGI. And yet here we're dealing with ancient Greek literature that contains cyclops, giants and sirens, so I was curious to see how Nolan was going to do it. In the film, after the Trojan War, Greek king Odysseus and his men spend years on a perilous and danger-filled voyage back home. All the while his son and wife await his return, his palace in Ithaca plagued with unruly suitors who want to serve themselves by getting the queen's hand in marriage. Much of the online discourse around the movie concerned the casting, and it seems a good place to start talking about the movie because I do have a few things I want to say on it. I was aware of this online war surrounding the casting of Lupita Nyong'o's casting as Helen of Troy. There was all this talk about it being woke tokenism, all of that, in that how can this woman play the woman whose abduction started the Trojan War, the woman whose face launched 1,000 ships? Much of the criticisms were disingenuous, I feel. I mean, an image that was constantly floated around of the actress to prove the point is from a film where she literally played a slave, so of course she'll look rugged and worn down. And it's unfortunate that this discussion was hijacked and used as fuel in a culture war, because the casting is ripe for legitimate criticism. Also, it's worth pointing out that for all the hullabaloo, that actress is in this 3-hour film for about 5 minutes at most. I liked The Odyssey. I thought it was great fun. But the casting was by far the most difficulty I had with it. Long story short, there were just too many famous faces in it that I struggled to really immerse myself into the world. You get used to the actors, and then another famous face will pop up and take you out of the film. You'll get used to it, then it'll happen again. Rinse and repeat. That was part of the issue. The other is that many of the actors didn't seem right for the role, and it's made all the more difficult to have the immersion there when there's surprisingly little interplay between the massive cast. Of course, this is a personal complaint. Others might find it to be no issue. In a perfect world, for me, a depiction of Homer's Odyssey would be full of unknown Mediterranean-looking actors, not a stacked cast of A-listers with iPhone faces who seem to have been cast without rhyme or rhythm, irrespective of if they even gave good performances or not. Some of them who did. Some who didn't, many of whom looked like they were cosplaying. Anne Hathaway, for example, was great, but did they really have facelift in 12,000 BCE? The bard in the opening scene had a very modern aura about him. Turns out he's a famous rapper, Travis Scott. Tom Holland was very mediocre, very bland as Odysseus' son, probably the second most important character in the film. I wish he and Robert Pattinson had swapped places. Pattinson would have given the character the depth and complexity the role demanded. I've not seen a film Elliot Page has been in since transitioning, so I wasn't aware how they looked or sounded. And to be honest, the character did seem like a small girl pretending to be a man. I nearly burst out laughing at John Bernthal's first appearance, where he just stands there staring, dressed in full Greek body armour, looking like he's drunkenly stumbled out of a costume party in the early hours of the morning. Hamis Patel is often cast as the exposition doctor or scientist in movies, and it was odd seeing him as Odysseus' number 2. I just couldn't buy it. Couldn't he have at least done a few push-ups before filming so he looked like a warrior? John Leguizamo is in the film as well, as is Maya Goth. Zendaya's in it, sparingly, for a combined screen time of about 5 minutes. Charlize Theron pops up a few times with very little to work with. And as good as he is in the film, Gary Oldman Matt Damon is not. Ultimately, he's simply Matt Damon with a beard. I just can't think why so many recognisable faces needed to be in such small roles. Yes, we could say the burden of immersion is on the viewer, but I don't fully agree, and filmmakers historically have been sensitive to the notoriety of their casting choices. I mean, I'm known as a Sopranos fan, right? So I'll give you a Sopranos example. The show's creator turned down veteran gangster movie actor Frank Vincent for a role in season 1 of the show because it would make people think too much of Goodfellas. Similarly, I'm sure, for example, some people couldn't get it out of their heads watching this film that they're seeing the current Spider-Man and Batman face off against each other. Okay, so that's all I'm gonna say about the cast. It's just something I had to get off my chest, and upon rewatch, I'm probably not going to have as much of an issue. The Odyssey contains much of the hallmarks of a Christopher Nolan movie. Some of the negative properties associated with Nolan are there, like a rapid fire editing style, and a kind of clinical, overly serious feel to the picture, a lack of warmth, a washed out and sometimes bleak, colourless look, a lack of sex and nudity, which is odd for an R-rated ancient Greece story. And Odyssey doesn't really come off as the crafty and quick-witted hero he is traditionally thought of as. Some of the more interesting elements of the character were removed, like the whole thing about him pridefully shouting his name to the Cyclops, which inadvertently dooms his ship because the Cyclops now knows his name, and the subsequent tying of himself to the mast during the siren songs being a kind of bragging rights thing. Here, they escape the Cyclops, but Odysseus just seems to randomly decide to shoot it before they're in the clear. And when he later ties himself to hear the song of the sirens, it's more out of curiosity than anything. I would have thought there would have been more flowery and imaginative lines, but there's a lot of anachronistic dialogue, like Holland constantly saying "my dad" instead of just saying "my father," or somebody saying "feel free to add some stuff" at one point in the film. That can be just as off-putting as the odd casting choices. Though I wonder how much of that can actually be because of the original story. For example, it is a bit funny to hear the Mentor character literally be called Mentor, because of course the word mentor comes from Homer's Odyssey. The Odyssey is an epic tale with mythological characters, but Nolan is a director who likes to stay within the parameters of relative realism. One who does offer more rational interpretations of the more mythological aspects of the Odyssey. Sometimes it makes for an interesting take, sometimes it doesn't work. Like the Hydra scene, for example. It was a bit lame. It felt like something you might find on a deleted scenes section on a DVD release, rather than be this terrifying sea monster. It was more kind of a barnacle, aquatic creature that protruded from a mountainside shell. I didn't even realise that this was supposed to be the Hydra when I was watching it. But that's Nolan for you, taking all these fantastical elements and grinding them down into something more down to earth, like he did with the Batman films. But there are positives. In particular, the complex original work is tailor-made for a Nolan narrative, told in fragmented flashbacks as Odysseus tries to recall what happened to him and his soldiers, how he ended up washed up on an unknown island. Said flashbacks are often a case of Matt Damon and his crew arriving on the shores of an unknown land, encountering something terrifying and otherworldly, and hightailing it out of there as fast as they can. It's a good structure for an action-adventure film, and Nolan delivers on that front, offering a solid 4 or 5 set pieces that were really well done, whether they be Damon and the boys tackling a brutal storm in the sea or finding themselves in the land of the dead. 2 particular standouts were an encounter with a giant cyclops, and a particularly horrifying one where the men are invited to a woman's home who turns out to be some kind of witch. The soldiers find themselves unable to stop eating the meal she gives them, and she proceeds to then horrifyingly mould and sculpt them into pigs. Freaky stuff. And needless to say, when it comes to special effects, animatronics, the Greek ships on water, it's a Nolan film, so it all looks pretty much fantastic all around. I also thought that shot of the soldiers entering Troy as Agamemnon stands there looking like a badass was really cool. Story-wise, I think there were 1 or 2 things that will be divisive. I liked them, I guess, but I can see how classicists will be irritated. Mild spoilers, I guess, but it's revealed in a pivotal scene, a scene that puts a twist on the entire story and would make a rewatch quite an interesting experience, seeing as though it all clicks into place here, is that Odysseus actually feels great shame and regret at what happened during the Battle of Troy. I was ready to roll my eyes at this postmodern take on the story, and to lament, why can't the main character just be a marauding conqueror who revels in the plundering of Troy? Why does every hero have to be depressed and reflective? And isn't it a bit weird how Odysseus does a lot of raiding and pillaging, but now all of a sudden has regret with this particular battle? But within the context of this particular film, it does work. After all, the specifics of Odysseus' guilt come from the Trojan horse, which was his idea. An idea which was elevated and commemorated, but something which was an ostensible peace offering, but of course was actually a dirty trick, and it broke the social contract, and it's set to be a slippery slope for the honourable laws of the old world to be eroded. In many ways, it's a similar theme to Nolan's previous film, Oppenheimer. I guess the Odyssey is pretty much the same film, but with Cyclops and witches. That's the real reason Odysseus doesn't want to go home. Something that is repeated throughout the film, and we never know why until right at the end. And in another twist, albeit delivered slightly clunkily through opaque dialogue where he literally says, "Our age of bronze is collapsing," Odysseus and the returning soldiers from Troy are the Sea People. For those who don't know, there were a mysterious confederation of raiders who wreaked havoc across the Mediterranean and may have caused the collapse of the late Bronze Age. It's still a mystery as to who exactly these people were, and in the film, their arrival is considered imminent. But like Napoleon's Interstellar, these awaited beings are actually the primary characters themselves, in that it's Odysseus and his people who have enacted a watershed moment by breaking the old laws of combat, who have caused the collapse of the late Bronze Age. And as Damon says in the film, their tale will be remembered in song, but their mistakes forgotten and repeated. It's a pretty fresh take on the work, if it hasn't been done before, and I'm not familiar with any work that has done it before, and I liked it. Purists might disagree, and it's very much a case of a movie having a kind of Catholic biblical feel about it, what with the main character's guilt, instead of feeling like a Greek epic. I mean, even his confession to Penelope resembles a Catholic confessional booth, but ultimately this is Nolan's imagining and iteration of the story. Just like Batman Begins was very different when it came out, but that's his version of the character. And it works for his film here, and it gave a story that is thousands of years old vigorous surprises. Even though at times I do wish for Odysseus to have just been unapologetic and a product of his time. The music was okay. I only really remember 2 tracks, one romantic one and the other a very tense one which was used in the action sequences. Some of it felt a little modern, but from what I read they tried to recreate what instruments of the time would have sounded like. I did like the thing about the non-diegetic soundtrack increasing in intensity until it climaxes with Damon twanging his bow, which happened a few times throughout. I think the less people know about the source material, the more they are likely to enjoy it, the less they'll lament changes or things being taken out. So all in all, I enjoyed it, as this big, loud action film with the final half hour gives it a fair amount of depth. I'd probably give it anywhere from 7 to 8 out of 10 as an adventure romp. It is very much Nolan's The Odyssey though, for better or worse, a modern gritty version of the work, not a definitive adaptation. And as a faithful adaptation, it would lose a lot of brownie points, I guess. Have you seen the film? What do you make of it? Let me know in the comments section below. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.